Hello, hello, hola. I'm Claudia Romo Edelman, delighted to be with one of my role models, my hero for decades, Secretary Alicia Barcena. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Claudia. For me, it's an honor to be with you and to find you again in this
Oh.
wonderful encounter.
First of all, you're truly my hero, and you know it. I
Oh,
am such a girl, like a stalker with you. Every time I see you, I'm like, oh.
yes,
But
me too. Me too. Me too.
you're incredible, an incredible role model and a leader, Mexican woman, and you've been in the global stages and representing Mexico everywhere. Thank you so much for everything that you are doing and have been done. How have you navigated, how have you made it being a woman and being Mexican, probably the first in many occasions in which you were the only one? How did you make it? And also, what is the relationship that you had to learn about being your true self as Mexican, but also adapt to the environments that probably were very either masculine or like different?
No, absolutely. I mean, it has been a very difficult journey, but the key word is roots
But
and identity. We Mexicans, and in my case, identity and your roots are so important. You carry them everywhere. So what really gives you power and gives you strength is to have roots, to know that you come from a powerful civilization with culture, with knowledge, with something you really always have. It's like a light inside yourself that you carry around. So it doesn't matter where you are. Uh, you bring something to that society. At the same time, you're also open to learn because you're humble in many ways, because Mexicans, we are like that. We go there, we're like sponges. We absorbed a lot of things. At the same time, we like to give. You know, we are happy people. I mean, frankly, we like to have fun. We like to make jokes, but at the same time, we want to understand. We have empathy. I think the word empathy, roots and empathy for me are the two keywords that we need to have when you have to do so many international roles.
and for our audience, because I know your background, for your audience, just guide us through the steps or the milestones of your career.
Uh-oh. Well, I started working precisely in the Yucatan area with
Mm.
the Mayas. And that's why when I talk about identity, I really mean it, because I started understanding the knowledge, the traditional knowledge of the Maya people, women in particular, who are the most knowledgeable about plants, about the nature, etc. Then I went into government, you know, and then after government, and which was an interesting experience on environment, by the way, then I went to the international arena.
Mhm.
I was invited by a Canadian who invited me to the first conference on environment and development in 1992. I'm revealing my age, by the way. Anyway, so the thing was that it was such a wonderful experience to
Mhm.
be there, to understand the status of the world. And it was it was more or less in parallel when the El Muro, you remember the
Right.
wall fell,
Yeah.
1989,
Yeah.
Berlin. So for me, the turning point of humanity, civilization, was at that moment. And that's when we had this conference on environment and development, which brought all the leaders of the world to reflect about the next stage. And I think we are living in a very similar moment right now, in which the old world is not dying and the new world is not emerging. So we are in an interregnum, and I think 2025 is going to be a similar year of a lot of changing things that we are going to confront.
And then you have been holding positions in the Mexican government, but also international organisms.
I think the most uh, salient point was when I was chief of staff of Kofi Annan,
Mhm.
because that's when I learned so much about the world and how one leader like Kofi Annan was able to cope with a very difficult world, how he was able to make deals, peace deals, and peacekeeping, peace. I mean, building, which is probably the most difficult part.
And at a time where the United Nations probably was the most relevant that has been in for
Ages,
decades and
exactly,
ages.
exactly. He was a real leader, I think, my consideration, and so for me it was tremendous. And then I had the opportunity to go back to Latin America and be the head of a wonderful organization, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. and I was there for 14 years in Chile.
Right.
And then the president of Mexico invited me to become his foreign affairs minister in the last part of his government last year. And now President Sheinbaum, the first woman in 200 years. Can you imagine? I mean, this is something we are living something, I mean, times that we never thought we were going to go through in Mexico, to have
Right.
a women president.
And you're running one of the probably most close to her heart. So-
Ministries, because yes, she's an environmentalist. She's very committed with these topics, with energy transition, and you know,
it demonstrates the trust that she has on you because like
absolutely.
her PhD is environment and she's like the person that she needed to be competent and ethical enough for her. Just you know, talk about Mexico and gender.
Yes.
What an incredible situation is happening in Mexico. Secretary, if I may, I left Mexico 30 years ago and I have been, but not as much as lately, where I was having invitations from these women groups. All of a sudden realized, and they were introducing themselves, and they were like, I am the owner of 17 hospitals and I have 5 kids and I play poker with my girlfriends on Thursday. And I am, so I was like, what is this Mexico? What is this woman empowerment? I never imagined 30 years ago that the women of Mexico would be like that. And so it's you and it's the President Claudia Sheinbaum. And there's an incredible gender revolution happening in Mexico. And at the same time, the gender problematic is still very relevant in Mexico. Tell us how
What happened?
what happened and where are we and how are we going to like where do you see the next 10 years
You see, I am very excited about what's happening in Mexico because, of course, this has been part of the history. You left 30 years
ago?
ago. I also was away for 14 years probably, but I never stopped meeting with the women, especially the women of Mexico. And I tell you something, I think there's a very powerful movement, silent sometimes movement in Mexico, very powerful woman at all levels, indigenous peoples, communities, Afro Mexicans. I think that the empowerment of women, of course, has been one of the main objectives of Claudia Sheinbaum. She's providing a lot of support for women. Now it's part of the Constitution. She made a reform on substantive equality between women and men to make sure that there's no salary gaps, that women have the same opportunities in every front. Now, it's not easy, it's not automatic. There has to be positive action because otherwise you won't get it. So we still have to be remain very attentive. And women, we have a responsibility of bringing other women, younger women, on board. You remember Madeleine Albright said once, "There will be a place in hell for those women that do not help other women." And I think this is the attitude that many women we have in the cabinet. We are parity. In the Congress there is parity. I think business needs to do much more. I think business is not doing enough.
And also I've noticed a very concerted effort um, to bridge to Mexicans in the US to make sure that probably this is everywhere in the world, but I live in the United States, so I notice it there. What do you think are bridges that could be built or furthered that don't have to be governmental, could be climate oriented or like corporate oriented communications? What do you think we can do and what would be the benefit of those bridges?
I think there are many bridges that can be built between Mexico and the US. One of those I think are very powerful are the ones that are happening at the border. The binational community is incredible. I went to the whole border and I realized how much, for example, Eagle Pass and Piedras Negras and Tijuana and San Diego, I mean, the communities come in and out. The people go in and out every day, several times between US and Mexico. There is a bonding there. There is a binational community there. Then you go to New York, for example, and you find again a lot of Mexican communities there that are in the restaurants. That immediately you connect with them. Immediately. So my view is that we need to connect people to people, civil society organizations to civil society, governmental, of course, And the other thing, I have a lot of, I would say, optimism with some governors in the U.S. Of course, the governor of California is one of my favorites. I think the governor of Kentucky, thought he was tremendous here in Davos. So I think the local authorities, we can understand each other. I met with the governor of Arizona. She's wonderful. So this type of linkages at the governmental level, but at the society level, at the women's organizations. We're going to have a women's conference in Mexico. By the way, you have to come,
Oh,
and that's going to be very important. And that's for 40 years have been the women of the region. In this case, is Latin America and the Caribbean, but also American women come, and I think it's very important to meet there and see what everybody's doing. But I think the bonding between the U.S. communities and the Mexican communities is stronger than anybody could think.
two last questions. Climate change, the agenda. How does it look like? What would you like our audiences to know about your vision?
Well, I think in climate change we have to do a lot more quickly, faster, and simultaneously. We are really in trouble because if we get to 1.5 degrees, we're going to see already a lot of phenomena that we are not accustomed to see. For example, the fires in
Los incendios.
California. The fires in California, frankly speaking, are an impact because there's lack of water, you have hydric stress, and of course we have high temperatures. And so the wildfires we're looking in California, this is historic.
Mhm.
So we have to realize that catastrophes are there. Acapulco is another very important example of what's going on. So we need to be careful. We are going to confront extreme weather events more and more and more because climate change accelerates those extreme weather events. We can protect ourselves. Yes, we can. What can we do? We have to aim for my case. We need to go for reforestation. We have to restore mangroves in the case of Mexico. We need to find solutions based on nature, and of course, we have to find an energy transition path. And that energy transition path, I see it more at the local level in the US through the governors. As I said before, the Kentucky governor, he came here with a lot of projects that he's doing on sustainable development. Maybe the federal government has a different direction. They don't want to go for the, Paris Accord and so forth. But business is already committed
Yeah.
to go for sustainable development, and also
Because it's
Europe.
better business.
But of
Because it's
course,
better business.
circular economy and recycling water and everything. I think we can do a lot of things here.
So the last question is the role of Mexico in the global arena. What is it? What should it be? What's your vision?
We need to come back to the international fora. Number one, we need to come back in many fronts. We need to come back on the environmental fora. That's why I went to Cali. We need to go back to the General Assembly. We need to be very active on the multilateral fora. On this fora, on Davos, we need to be everywhere because I think Mexico can bring something different to the equation. What can we bring? We are bridge builders. What I would say is that we have a capacity to articulate and to bring to the table a solution for many conflicts and many ideas, because we are not either one side or the other. We can really come together. For example, in the plastics, we are builders of consensus. So our role is to build consensus on matters that are so important. And I think Mexico can do that. We are peace builders by nature. We were against nuclear weapons. We are still there. So I think Mexico has a tradition, and we need to keep it on and to continue becoming more and more active at the international arena.
And Secretary, I have to say it. I don't think there's anybody that could be bringing the Mexican values, peace building, and bridge making with efficiency as you do. And I really think that you're an
Mhm.
incredible global leader with the best of Mexico to the world. Thank you so much for being with us
Claudia,
here today.
this is why we are so very good friends. So I hope to
Thank
see
you
you
so much.
every year in Davos or
Absolutely.
wherever we can, our paths will find.
Totally.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.